Let's face it, rough is a tough topic to talk about. Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. Let's face it, race is a tough topic to bring up in any conversations. Is there ever pushback from black people when white people talk about racism? We'll talk to Emmy Award-winning director Loki Mulholland and find out how he deals with talking about race with black people and white people, and who he gets more pushback from. So it's an important conversation. You won't want to miss it with Loki Mulholland. Check out our conversation.
It's not a brag. It's just it is what it is. So Ruby Bridges, that little girl, and that famous photo. She first grade, the federal marshals, and Norman Rockwell did a painting of it and so forth. So she's a family friend, and when we talk, and we actually have a podcast with her as well, with Ruby and Levon and I. But every time she talks, she really talks about love and hate. That fundamentally, that's what it's all about. And we need to find out where we stand on that, because we can't serve two masters. And we need to love more and hate less. And so, like we talked about earlier on with, when I did a Black Lives Matter post, or people, react to those things, and there's that level of hate that exists. When you love someone because you're interacting with them and you know them and we have that empathy like the Savior has, and so forth, we have that capacity to see people the way the Lord sees them. And that we know where hate comes from, and we don't want to serve that. And that might not be absolute hate, but when we get worked up emotionally like that, and that emotion is to fight back, to not use intellectual nonviolence, but to fire back and to say things that are hurtful, like All Lives Matter is hurtful. I don't get to tell you how to feel if I punch you, right? So it's not my place as a white person to ask, to tell an African American how they should feel about words like All Lives Matter. So we need to start, as Latter-day Saints, love more and hate less. Quite frankly.
That brings up another question I want to ask you about. We've talked about this on the phone before,
yeah.
But I think it would be good to talk about here. I've been in some Black LDS groups on Facebook, for example, and a lot of times I'll try to post information about Paul Reeve or Russell Stevenson, or historians that talk about black figures in history or issues like that. And I will get a lot of pushback. Oh, two white guys talking about race.
Well, shouldn't white people be talking about race?
Well, that's been my response, and I've actually said that, and then I get lectured that are you publishing this in white groups? Which of course I am.
Yeah.
But a lot of times black people don't want to hear two white people, and we are, even right now, two white people talking about race.
Yeah.
And how do you, because I think you've had some brushback as well. In my mind, I just walk out of there and be like, okay, if you don't like my message, it's not welcome.
So first, there's something you said there, black people. No, that was a black person, not black people. That was a black person who pushed back. Black people not all black people push back, right? So just consider the language there. But that's also that sort of, there's that, we talk about this in Uncomfortable Truth, that sort of like, your chest starts to tighten because we're getting attacked.
Well, I left that group because
right.
I was so annoyed. It wasn't just one person.
No,
I felt piled on, to be honest.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's social media,
right.
All right? I mean, you also have to consider, does that person feel threatened that their message isn't going to be heard? Do they have skin in the game economically, right? There's that. Trust me. There are people who, it's like, great, but the fact of the matter is, if white people aren't talking about this, nothing's going to change.
Right.
I mean, let's just be fair, because racism is a white person's disease that we keep asking everyone else to solve. There's a lot of emotion involved in this, right? A lot more emotional investment for African Americans than it is for white people, clearly. And so that's going to come out from some people, right? And again, they're entitled to those opinions and so forth. But yeah, you can feel like you're getting piled on, whatever else. But why be in the game if you're just going to quit, right? So yeah, I mean, people ask, do you ever get pushback from black people? I'm like, no, most pushback I get is actually from white people, right? There are some people who aren't happy with me. They're African American. I'm sure. That's all right. There are people. There's African Americans who aren't happy with my mom, right? Good grief. Yeah, that's all right. But that's not all black people. Just like not all white people are racist, for goodness sakes, right? It can seem like that, of course. But, not every black person is an angry black person either, right? Even though to white people, anytime a black person says something that's opposition or questions somebody, all of a sudden, well, they're the angry black man. So people go, well, I'll get people like, well, why are you, is it unfair for you to be hired to talk about diversity and inclusion? Who are you to talk about diversity and inclusion? I'm like, well, because they're not going to listen to you if you're black. Trust me, white people don't listen to black people, right? And if they're talking about racism, they're definitely not listening to that. Because, one, we go, well, gee, they have an agenda, because they're black and it's racism. So, of course, they have an agenda, right? So, there's more of an inclination for a white person to listen to me talking about it because also my mother, right? I get that little, I could call it a trump card because I don't curse. But, I have that little card I can play, my mom card, right? Because she's a civil rights activist, right? Mm-hmm. And people can see that. And there's something to be said about that. It's not that for African Americans to go, oh my gosh, thank goodness there's a white person who's actually a decent human being, like my mother, right? It's for white people to go, oh, I didn't know we were involved in the civil rights movement. Oh, wow, it's something to stop and think, to go. Yeah. So this wasn't just a black issue. No, this is an American issue, right? Well,
and that's what's nice about your mom, because when we think about civil rights leaders, we think about Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, people like that, Jesse Jackson, they're always black.
Right.
And so it's nice to have
They always will be black, by the way.
Yeah, they will. They should be. But there are white people like your mom that fall hard.
Now, my joke was you were talking about Dr. King and you're talking about Medgar Evers and Jesse Jackson saying they're always black. I'm like, well, yes, they're always black because they are black, right? Sorry. Yes, but then you have my mother, right? And when I do assembly, part of the problem kids have and stuff nowadays, and people have when they talk about the civil rights movement is, oh well, Dr. King got a dream, Rosa sat on a bus, oh, we've arrived. That's all they see in the civil rights movement, that it's a black thing. Again, I come back to this thing, no, this is an American issue. This is not Black History Month, by the way, that we're recording this in, right? This is the Black experience.
Which is every month.
In American history, which is every month, right? I've had people say, well, why do we have to have Black History Month? Well, we don't have White History Month. I'm like, actually, we do have White History Month. It's every single month, right? And this is not about trying to shoehorn in a white person in the Black history, no. And so when I talk about, when I'm doing diversity and inclusion, trainings and seminars and whatever else, talking about these things, I mean, it's because, there's a better chance that someone actually might listen to what I have to say, and then they're going, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. I can kind of handle this a little bit. So now they might actually be more inclined to read some of these books written by African American authors and the like, and see these sort of films and such, and not bristle. Put up those walls that block that opportunity to actually listen and to empathize at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. It's hard to go into a space and try to participate and get blown up for it, right? Which is what happened to you, right? For example, that doesn't happen all the time, And who knows what was going on with that individual or with those individuals in their lives, and what was going on. I'd have to question going, okay, who was killed that day, right? What frustrations were they dealing with in life and stuff that they feel that they needed to, speak their mind in that fashion and question that. one of the things that, when people say, well, what should I do as a white person if I want to get involved and so forth? I said, show up and shut up. Just be there to listen, not to tell people what to think. Black people know what to think. They know what the problems are and they know how to solve them. What we need as a country is, the needle won't move. LeVon Brown talks about this oftentimes in our podcast. He's like, look, African Americans make up like 12%, 14% of the population. Nothing's going to change unless white people are involved, right? And so to make those movements happen, like Black Lives Matter, white people had to show up, right? Because that's where the power structure is. So suddenly now, all of a sudden, corporations are falling over themselves to talk about Black Lives Matter. Why? Because they're seeing that, hey, like actually, the people who actually buy our stuff, which is majority white people, right? That demographic, we want their money, and they actually care about this stuff. And so, but you need that for policy change and everything else to happen. Because politically, that's the way the system is set up for right now, and that's the space we have to operate in. But it's more about that presence and how we can help. My mom never came into a space and said, hey, here's how I think it should be done. If they asked her opinion, she would tell them, because they were asking, because she was an expert. She'd already been involved in dozens of sit-ins and protests. Well, why would you not ask her, right? But she would never tell people what to do. Being at the lunch counter was an invite, right? Being in the Freedom Rides was an invite. And so it's not something we should be offended by as white people if we're going to go and help. And then, hey, well, what can I do to help? Can you send an email? Yeah. Can you, staple this? Sure. We all want to be on the front lines because that looks good for the optics and so forth, and we feel good about ourselves. And click, get the selfie, throw it on Instagram, whatever else. That's that sort of, someone used this term the other day. I'm trying to remember it now, but I would call it the social media activist, right? Where you'll show up to a protest just to look good, right? It's like what's your real point and all of that. And so for those who, as a white person that wants to get involved, just get involved. And the most important audience is the one that you interact with, your family, your church members, whomever else. When you hear something or see something that's wrong, you say something. Don't stand back, stand out. Step forward, and call it for what it is. So, believe me, it makes Elders Quorum very interesting sometimes. Right? I've done it, right? And yeah, people aren't going to be excited about you at times. But you know what? When that prompting comes to do the right thing, that's from the Spirit, and we should be following the Spirit, right? And that's let's get back to the gospel here for a moment. Yes, I'm on a tangent, but let's get back to the gospel, right?
We like tangents.
Yes. But yeah, not everyone's excited about those sort of things when you bring them up. But if the Spirit is telling you to say something right when it's being said, then you need to say it. I think we sing a hymn about that, don't we? Do what is right, let the consequence follow. Right? Well, we didn't say do what is right, when it's comfortable, when it's convenient. What's right and what's easy aren't the same thing.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Emmy Award-winning director Loki Mulholland. Our next conversation with Loki will be our last, and so you need to sign up to our free newsletter at gospeltangents.com/newsletter, and I'll send you a secret link. In our final conversation, I'm going to ask Loki if he thinks the LDS Church should apologize for past racism.
A wrongs are wrong, so just apologize for that wrong. Only good things can come from that, right? Yeah, yes, you might actually have to, eat a little crow or something or whatever it is, but at the end of the day, look how much more the blessings are going to come from that. That people aren't going to live, hold that over you anymore. I just don't see. I don't see the problem in apologizing. I guess at the end of the day, coming all around to. I just don't see the problem with it.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, sign up at patreon.com/gospeltangents, and for $5 a month, you can hear the entire interview without any interruptions. If you'd like to see the whole video, that's just $8 a month, and you can sign up either at youtube.com/gospeltangents or on our website at gospeltangents.com and click the yellow subscribe button, or you can go to patreon.com/gospeltangents, and I'll just need to make sure that we're Facebook friends, and I'll add you to our insiders group, and you can see the entire interview uncut. If you'd like to get PDF transcripts of our interviews, those are just $10 a month. And for just $15 a month, I will send you paperback versions of our transcripts as soon as they come out. Or, of course, you can buy them on Amazon as well. Go to Amazon.com and do a search for Gospel Tangents Interview, and you can see all of our transcripts there. Don't forget to sign up for our updates at Facebook.com/GospelTangents. Of course, you can follow us at Gospel Tangents on Twitter. To hear our interviews updated to your podcast player, go to tinyurl.com/gospeltangents and make sure you give us a 5-star review. And of course, you should show your support for Gospel Tangents with one of these cool t-shirts like this green one, or light blue, sport gray, royal blue, purple, of course black, beautiful gold, and of course Utah red. I probably left out some colors, but if you want to see more, go to gospeltangents.com/shop and you can get one of these. So once again, thanks for listening. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some more of our great videos. Thanks again.